What if the very faith that preached love and salvation became the tool to enslave minds and conquer lands? The cross and the sword, two powerful symbols that, when combined, redrew the map of an entire continent. How did Christianity, a religion born in the Middle East, become one of the most influential forces behind European domination of Africa? Today, we dive deep into the hidden history of faith, power, and empire. Welcome to Voices from the Colonized, where we uncover the stories, struggles, and resilience of those who lived under the shadow of empire. If you care about truth, history, and justice, hit that like, share, and subscribe button to help us spread awareness. And if you'd like to support our work, check out the links in the description to help us continue bringing these forgotten voices to light. The arrival of Christianity in Africa, a second coming. Christianity was not new to Africa. In fact, the faith had deep roots in places like Egypt and Ethiopia long before European missionaries arrived. But by the 15th century, Christianity returned to Africa with a new face, one backed by guns, ships, and imperial ambitions. When Portuguese explorers landed on the West African coast in the 1400s, they didn't just bring traders and sailors, they brought priests. These missionaries, sanctioned by the Catholic Church, aimed to convert local rulers and integrate African societies into the global Christian world. But conversion was rarely a spiritual mission alone. It was deeply entangled with commerce, resource extraction, and the transatlantic slave trade. Christian rhetoric justified the enslavement of Africans, framing it as a way to civilize the heathens and bring them salvation. Christianity as a tool of empire. European powers quickly realized that religion was a powerful instrument for control. The logic was simple: change a people's faith and you change their worldview. Missionaries worked hand in hand with colonial administrators. The Bible was often introduced before the rifle, softening resistance by framing European dominance as divinely ordained. Colonial propaganda portrayed Europeans as paternal figures sent by God to uplift backward societies. A chilling phrase captures this mindset. The Africans had the land and we had the Bible. Then we taught them to pray with their eyes closed. When they opened them, we had the land and they had the Bible. This wasn't just metaphorical. It was the lived reality of millions, the Doctrine of Discovery, and the moral cover for colonization. Behind the missionary zeal lay a powerful legal and religious framework known as the Doctrine of Discovery. Issued through papal bulls in the 15th century, it declared that Christian rulers had the right to claim non-Christian lands. In essence, the Church blessed imperial conquest. Lands that were not Christian were seen as empty terra nullius and their inhabitants as people in need of salvation, even if that salvation came through subjugation. This doctrine wasn't just theology. It became international law, shaping treaties and colonial claims across Africa. The moral justification for empire rested on the idea that colonization was a civilizing mission. Education, language, and cultural erasure, missionary schools were among the first colonial institutions established across Africa. They taught reading, writing, and arithmetic, but always through the lens of Christian doctrine. African names, languages, and spiritual traditions were systematically suppressed. Young Africans were told that their ancestral religions were pagan, their traditions barbaric, and their heritage inferior. In place of their own identity, they were given Western names, European history, and a new sense of morality aligned with colonial rule. This process created a class of African elites educated in Western values, who often served as intermediaries between colonizers and the local population. This was not accidental. It was by design. By reshaping the minds of the colonized, Christianity made empire sustainable. Resistance and collaboration. The story, however, is not one-sided. Christianity also became a source of resistance. African converts began to question the hypocrisy of European missionaries who preached equality but practiced racism and exploitation. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, African independent churches emerged, blending Christian teachings with local traditions and anti-colonial activism. Leaders like Simon Kimbangu in Congo used Christian prophecy to inspire resistance against colonial authorities. This duality, where Christianity was both a tool of oppression and a spark for liberation, remains one of the most complex legacies of colonial history. The scramble for Africa and the missionary rush. When European powers carved up Africa at the Berlin Conference of 1884-85, missionaries followed the colonial borders. They penetrated deeper into the continent, often acting as scouts and informants for colonial governments. Missionary reports provided valuable intelligence on geography, local politics, and resources information that imperial administrators used to expand their control. In many ways, the missionary was the advance guard of empire. The psychological impact. Perhaps the most profound consequence of missionary activity was psychological. The message drilled into generations of Africans was clear. Your gods are false. Your culture is primitive. Your salvation depends on becoming like your colonizers. This internalized sense of inferiority left deep scars. Even after independence, many African societies continued to grapple with a fractured identity, torn between indigenous traditions and the values implanted during colonial rule. Christianity and the slave trade. We cannot discuss Christianity's role in Africa without mentioning its entanglement with slavery. While some missionaries opposed the slave trade, others defended it as a way to civilize Africans. Biblical passages were twisted to justify bondage, and Christian symbols adorned ships carrying human cargo. Even after abolition, the missionary presence in Africa was often framed as a way to redeem the continent from its sinful past, reinforcing the idea that Africa needed saving always by outsiders. The post-colonial legacy. Today, Christianity remains one of the dominant religions in Africa, with millions of adherents. Churches play a major role in education, healthcare, and politics, but the questions linger. Was Christianity truly a gift of faith or a weapon of empire? How much of Africa's Christian identity is voluntary, and how much is the residue of colonization? The truth lies somewhere in the tension between belief and coercion, between spiritual freedom and historical manipulation. Conclusion. Taking back the narrative. The story of Christianity in Africa is not simply about faith, it's about power. It shows how religion can be used to uplift or to oppress, to liberate or to dominate. And most importantly, it reminds us that colonization was never just about land, it was about the soul. If you found this deep dive enlightening, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Voices from the Colonized. We have many more stories that uncover the hidden truths of history. And if you want to help us keep producing this content, check out the links in the description to support us financially. Your contribution helps us amplify the voices that empire tried to silence. Thank you for watching, and remember, history is not just about the past. It shapes the present.